Hi everyone, thanks for coming. Today I'm going to be talking about batched bonding curves, which is a solution to front running, which is rampant on all on-chain exchanges. It is a big problem, and hopefully this is a good solution. So my name is Billy Rennekamp. I'm involved in a number of projects. The one closest to my heart is Clovers network. I also said that I'd mention that another talk I almost gave instead of this one was on refungible tokens, which is an EIP I'm working on. So if you're interested in that concept, come talk to me afterwards. Clover's network is being built by Ben's studio. I've also been part of Meme Lords, a curation market for memes, ENS Nifty, a tool for converting ENS domain names to non-fungible tokens. I work for Cosmos Network, the Internet of Blockchains, and for Gnosis, building prediction markets. Today I'm going to talk about some background research on the topic, front running in general, then go over the three implementations of batch bonding curves, calling them batched ordered, match and fill, common clearing price. Then some links to documentation. There's some live code and a more in-depth article on this topic. And then if there's any questions and discussion, I welcome it. So background and research. Most of this work was done on behalf of Gnosis with regard to continuous organizations. But just for a little bit of background on bonding curves in general, I want to go over the concept. Typically, you think of it as a contract who's willing to mint new tokens or burn tokens based on some price algorithm. This image right here could be kind of thought as price equals supply squared. You're maybe familiar with this quadratic-looking graph. The x-axis is the token supply, and the y-axis is the price. That area underneath that graph can be kind of thought as the collateral that's being held inside the contract. That money's used for buybacks, basically. So every time you mint new tokens, the money you use to mint them is held in the contract, and every time somebody wants to burn their tokens, basically sell them, that collateral is used to buy them back, and that price will adjust according to the number of tokens in circulation. Typical way to think about it, like I was saying, is price equals supply squared, or mx plus b, sort of a slope graph that we're all familiar with. Another implementation is from Bancor, and that uses something called a reserve ratio or a connector weight. So under that line, you can see price is defined as balance divided by supply times reserve ratio. The reserve ratio is the balance divided by the market cap, and the market cap is the price times supply. So those are the two different paradigms of thinking about this. And I'll go in now to continuous organizations. This is typically thought of as some kind of organization that uses a bonding curve for minting and burning shares. So those shares would be the tokens. That locked collateral that's used for buybacks, part of that is used as working capital for an organization, with the idea that token holders would receive some form of dividends from profit from this company. The details of how all those are implemented sort of vary across different descriptions. I mentioned that I was doing research on this on behalf of Gnosis. They recently built a new decentralized exchange called the Dutch X, and they're giving control of that on-chain exchange to a DAO called the DX DAO. And so there's some talk about maybe making this DX DAO a continuous organization. A lot of the ideas also are being written by Thibaut Fabre around the continuous organization C-org. Really interesting ideas about regulating these and turning them into Reg C corporations so that this is kind of the crowdfunding regulation. So you don't need to be an accredited investor, but you can kind of crowdfund up to $1 million and have the token buyback still take place. Also, Apiary through Aragon, which is a project from Luke Duncan, being built by Pando and 4ire and others, and Giveth from Jeff Emmett and company. So all of these situations suffer from front running. If you guys are familiar with maybe this book that came out, Flash Boys, sort of high-frequency trading, this is rampant, or at least exists in traditional trading, and it's illegal. It's considered illegal activity in trading, but front running in general is kind of a form of insider trading. It's where you see a transaction coming in and you jump in front of it based on the knowledge of that transaction following. You can sort of capitalize on that position. And with on-chain exchanges, basically all trading is insider trading because of this. You know, when you have a public ledger and you can see all of these transactions in the mempool, you really open yourself up. There are a few methods for trying to remedy it. None of them are 100% successful. But again, sort of to go over what front running is about, you can think of it as being possible whenever there's a guaranteed price movement. So if a buy order was coming in, you could sandwich that order with another buy order. As soon as that original buy order is executed, that price would have gone up, and then you can sell from that. So you have a guaranteed price movement up. You basically take the wind out of the sails of that legitimate purchase. Similarly with a sell order, say you already have some of these tokens, but you see a sell order coming in, you could get a sell order in front of those so that when you knew that they guaranteed to move the price down, you could buy back in. You would basically increase your current holding with zero risk. Similarly, with this concept of dividends in this continuous organization, if you see basically a dividends transaction coming in, you know that all token holders are about to accrue a little more money, so you can jump right in between it and buy in, benefit from that movement, and sell. Alternatively, the opposite, say some of working capital is about to be removed. That might affect the price as well. So you can sell right before that working capital transaction and then buy back in again afterwards. You would increase your holdings for free. So I don't know if you saw this talk from Phil Diane at DevCon 4, but it's a really great talk. I recommend checking it out. And he has some really amazing statistics. He's been working with a group sort of studying this problem. And back in 2017, only on Ether Delta, there was potential for $4,500 of profit just front running on Ether Delta alone. If you remember, that's kind of a while ago in crypto terms, and there's a lot more on-chain exchanges and a lot more opportunity for that. This graph on the right shows when they published a study on this concept and then started tracking transactions, which were front-running transactions, and they just basically exploded. Similar attacks are available on Bancor, Uniswap. They estimate that 30% of all blocks contain some kind of programmatic arbitrage transaction, which is a front-running transaction most of the time. One method for trying to prevent this is a min return, which is used on Bancor. So if you make a buy transaction, you can say, I expect I should get this many tokens in return. If I don't get that many tokens, I want this transaction to fail. So if somebody jumps in front of you, that price would increase and you wouldn't get as many tokens as you expected. That transaction would fail. It's a pretty bad user experience when you have to kind of expect that your transactions will fail because this activity is rampant. Uniswap uses a timeout parameter, which means sort of talking about another way for miners to front run, which is that they hold on to your transaction. They don't include it in the mempool until they decide that it's like a good time to move in or move out. They kind of can control the ability to go in. This is sort of the extreme version of front running in which it's not about other users just pumping up gas prices to get in front of you, but it's actually the miner itself who can order those transactions and take advantage of ordering those transactions. So enter batch bonding curves. I think I'm missing a slide. So I have 3 implementations proposed. Like I mentioned earlier, one is batched and ordered, one is match and fill, and another is common clearing price. The basic concept stands on all 3, and that's where over a certain span of blocks, you collect all the buy orders and you collect all the sell orders. And then after that span, you allow withdrawals of those tokens or of that collateral based on a common clearing price or some grouped clearing price. So this span of blocks could be as little as 1 block, say. It could be as long as 10 blocks or more. If you do it, say, as short as 1 block, you kind of open yourself up to another problem, which is block stuffing. Somebody could just fill that block with a lot of high gas transactions that push the other people into the next block, and they're able to capitalize in the same sort of front-running method. So the first method, batch and ordered, is kind of the simplest one. It's where you would take all of the buy orders and then all the sell orders. You group them together, so it's basically one big transaction, one big sell transaction. You keep track of how much people put into each of theirs, but then you execute all of them at once and then all of the other ones at once. The problem with this is that it really favors one party over the other. So say you were the buyers, you were buying orders, and yours were executed first. You would push the price up, which is great for the sellers. They really want a high price when they're selling. So if you're part of that first group, you lose out compared to the second group who's really capitalizing on this new position. Alternatively, if the sells were executed first, the price would be pushed down, and that's really great for these buyers who are able to buy at this low price and push the price back up. So you could say this is a feature, not a bug, and just say, I'd like to really prioritize my buyers over my sellers. I think the sellers are sort of leaving the ecosystem. They're not doing anything for my token. The buyers are contributing. They're pushing the price up, so I'm going to give them a better deal out of this whole scenario. This is similar to the idea of having a different curve for buys and a different curve for sells. Blah. Excuse me. So you can take that as a feature and actually implement that because it's something you want to see inside of your situation. Another attribute is that if you execute the sells first, there's going to be an overall increase in the price per token compared to executing the buys first. So again, that sort of moves the price of your token up if that's part of your scheme and you want that. The next one is match and fill. I have to thank Martin Kopelman from Gnosis for this one. And so with the bonding curve, you always have an exact price at that moment. However, as soon as you start executing orders, that price gets moved either up or moved down. But if you have a group of buys and a group of sells who are waiting, you can use that exact price as basically a match price. So you will execute as many as possible of those buys and sells together at that price, and you'll end up clearing one whole half. There is like one chance that you have the exact same amount of buys as sells, and they'll just even each other out, and then you're done with it. But most likely you're going to have a little leftover on one side. So once you've done that, you take that leftover and you execute it with a normal bonding curve, and then you combine those prices of the bonding curve price and the match one for whichever group was larger, and you let them clear at that combined price. So that results in a different price from the buyers and the sellers, similar to the first scenario, but those prices are going to be a lot closer together, and they're going to actually reflect whichever group was larger in that moment, which could be a more equitable way to price those transactions. The third one is kind of the holy grail, and it's this find a uniform price for all buys and all sells. However, the math to sort of execute that is really not practical on the Ethereum virtual machine. And so thanks to Tom Walter, also from Gnosis, we came up with sort of a method for finding this clearing price and a schema for implementing it even when you don't need to actually calculate that price on chain. So the way it works is you basically have this goal of finding some universal price P. And you can think of all of the sells and all of the buys as being a change in tokens, a total change in tokens and a total change in collateral. That's as delta X and delta C. So when you're selling some amount of X tokens, these are all the sells, this is going to result in the removal of some amount of collateral, which is going to be that universal price times those number of tokens being sold. You can also think of the delta collateral being all of this collateral coming in from the buys with the addition of that collateral divided by some universal price number of tokens. So rewritten another way, you have delta X equals negative X, those are the tokens being sold, plus collateral divided by price, those are the tokens being generated by the buys. Delta collateral is going to be the collateral coming in from the buys minus the collateral that is extracted from those sells. So one way to calculate the purchase return on one of these bonding curves is by taking the integral of a price formula. So here you can see purchase equals m over n plus 1. This is sort of with the price formula in mind of mx to the n. We can use this mechanism for calculating a purchase and substitute our delta c and our delta x, as you can see in the bottom part, and this will give us a formula that has this universal price p. However, if you look at this formula, it's a level of polynomial that's quite difficult to solve. I was really hoping that Wolfram Alpha would be able to just give me a p equals, but it doesn't really happen that way. So what you end up doing is substituting all of the variables that you have in your certain situation, and you get usually 3 different answers. Sometimes you get an imaginary number as an answer, sometimes you get a negative number, sometimes you get a number that doesn't change the token balances at all. And so you kind of go through this process of elimination to find out which price makes the most sense. And this, like I mentioned, this process is rather difficult. It's a high level of mathematics. It's just not practical on the EVM. But what is practical on the EVM is verifying the solution. So this is a similar tactic that's being taken by Gnosis on their diffusion exchange, which is different from the Dutch X. Uses ZK snarks and a sort of true bit style verification process where you don't need to actually calculate it on chain, but if there's a challenge to the solution that you have, you can actually verify the solution without having to do it from the beginning. So you can easily take a price and work backwards from that. So you've got all these buys, you've got all these sells, the spans have passed, and then nobody can withdraw their tokens until somebody provides the price that will clear them. You can verify that that price is correct pretty easily because you just execute the orders and you make sure that the slope hasn't changed, and then you're allowed to withdraw at that price. So this is also kind of a bad UX experience where you have an asynchronous sort of withdrawal. All of these situations actually have this where you put in your buy order, but you have to wait till it clears, and then you have to withdraw. However, it would be rather trivial to add a fee to this transaction. That fee could be paid out to a third party who's willing to execute the withdraw function so that you could sort of set it and forget it, and somebody else would be incentivized to actually deliver that money to you after the price is cleared. That same mechanism could be used for rewarding whoever finds that clearing price. It could be done with a bot or whoever. So I've built implementations of all of these batch bonding curves. They're available on GitHub. If you wanted to take a picture of this QR code, it should pull up. I also today published an article on Medium that outlines all these scenarios. It also links to an observable, which is kind of a Jupyter style notebook. So it has all of the different code and math and implementations, and it also lets you sort of change the different variables to see what, say, more buys or more sells would result in with each of these different batch bonding curve scenarios. So that is good trades take time. Oh, I have to give a shout out to Gnosis again. That's actually the slogan for the Dutch X, where the inspiration for all this took place from. This is the only on-chain exchange that's not front-runnable at this point. They have a 6-hour reverse Dutch auction that just restarts with another batch of tokens after that 6 hours takes place. And so, this sort of idea that slow things down, don't allow front running, and asynchronously withdraw your tokens afterwards is a way to prevent front running from taking place. That's where it all came from. So you can find me, my username on most things is okay with me, or just my name, Billy Rennekamp. Send me an email if you'd like, studio@ben.am. Yeah. I feel like I went through that pretty fast. Do we have any questions or comments? Anything out there to pass the time? Thanks. Okay, yeah. Go ahead. No questions? Anybody feel like getting up here and telling jokes? I think you have like 20 minutes till the next talk. All right. Thanks a lot. Oh, sorry, please.
Unfortunately, we don't have a wireless mic to bring around to you, so if you can come up here for questions.
Okay, so in the case of Ether Delta, you can front run by pumping your gas and bidding higher to get the order. Help me understand why that's such a problem.
So you have zero risk as a trader in that situation. You're basically free riding on somebody else's genuine idea of making a purchase, and you're also taking a little bit of the power out of their purchase. You're basically stealing from a person in that scenario.
Everyone has the equal opportunity to do it, right? Everyone has an equal opportunity, so how is it stealing? It sounds like more like a competition.
Equal opportunity is an interesting way to put that. I mean, you do need a level of sophistication to sort of watch the mempool, and there's actually from this same Phil Dyan talk, really interesting sort of documentation on the competition that's begun between different front runners. So they both start pumping up their gas to get in front of the other. And so it's really interesting to see in this 15 seconds that takes place during a mempool, how they change their gas price over and over again to beat each other, and how actually miners aren't even paying attention to it. So they'll stop watching and just take whoever's like in front halfway through that block clearing price. And you can see that those front runners don't know that, so they keep bumping their gas price even more afterwards. So that miner would have been able to make a lot more money in fees if they'd just been paying attention. But you're already seeing basically a competition of front runners front running each other. But this is not really the competition that you think about when you think about a marketplace. Marketplace should be the intention of people who are actually buying the asset and want to return from that. And if you have somebody else who's basically able to suck money out of their transaction without contributing anything, that's just stealing.
Okay, all right, I think I understand where you're coming from. But so you're saying because it's difficult to do, some people have an advantage, so they're stealing.
I mean, yeah, when you say it's an equal opportunity, everyone has the ability to write a bot and do that, but obviously not everyone has the actual ability to do that. And I mean, I don't think that we should be encouraging a fair place where everyone can front run each other, because all that does is just say like, oh, well, he has a gun, so he can steal better than everybody else, but maybe we should give everybody guns so we can all steal better.
Okay, no, I think all this is awesome. Thank you for the talk.
Thanks a lot.
The retort to that would be that if people knew that people were going to steal from them in this way, they wouldn't use it.
Right. Also sort of defeats.
If it had to be mandatory that
Right, right. Concern about reducing volatility in the market by reducing activity overall. And is that, you mean with batch bonding curves or with front running? It's not taking out arbitrage opportunities. The market still will move, but it'll move based on actual people who are making real buys and sells instead of being moved by people who are just, chipping away at somebody's real order. In terms of slowing down and being like a feature of a normal market where it's moving rapidly, I don't know. I mean, that kind of points to markets being sort of gambling, in my opinion. So I don't know if I would say that that's a good feature of a marketplace or not. It's probably desirable for some, but that depends on your strategy, I guess.
Do you know what the situation now is with front running and how extensive it is currently? And how far is this being implemented?
So I think there's a website called frontrun.me, which is also associated with this group that Phil Dyan is a part of, who's I think done the most research around it. And the sort of reports coming in is that it's just massively rampant and sort of increasing all the time. And so I do believe this is a real problem that needs to be addressed as soon as possible. I think that a lot of crypto projects sort of beat themselves up solving problems that don't exist yet in the hopes of like having it solved before you get to the point that it's a problem. I would actually hope that we do more of that with this specific topic. And this work is done within the last week or so, so it's not implemented on any project that I know of. I was kind of thinking about forking Uniswap and trying it out. I mean, I love Uniswap and I love the success it's having. I'm just worried that like you get too many people who are using a version of it that's front runnable. It'd be hard to transfer all of that money into one that's not. So yeah, if you know anyone who'd be interested in implementing it on their exchange, I highly recommend you to send them my way or to send them to the documents. And I'd love to see it in the real world.
And how do you stop miners from... does this solve the issue for miners?
So the miner problem can be mitigated from the timeout parameter, which is implemented on Uniswap. It basically says, I'm submitting a trade. If it doesn't get executed in the next 15 seconds, it's going to fail, which would, partially mitigate a miner being able to hold onto your transaction and stick it in a block later. Doesn't fully. They can still reorder the current ones. This does solve that because as long as it's within that span of blocks, it's going to have the same price no matter what the order is. Going once, going twice. All right, thanks very much.